Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today, I am so excited to be chatting with Amanda Ford. She is the art director at LesserEvil. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm very excited to tell Amanda's story because I think she's kind of on a different side of some of the guests where we have on. Amanda is very much in like the creative art area within marketing. So very excited to tell her story. But before we jump into all of that, Amanda, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I am the art director for Lesser Evil. I oversee all of our brand creative. It's a really cool company. We are based out of Connecticut, and we sell a bunch of snack products. We're mostly sold pretty much every retailer: Whole Foods, Target, um, Sam's Club, Costco, Sprouts, HEB. And what's awesome is that we sell popcorn and puff snacks. We do a bunch of different flavors. So everything from pink salt to a garlic blend to a cheesy popcorn. We have products for everybody for every walk of life. We do kid snacks. We do snacks for toddlers, teens, everybody. So it's really delicious stuff. And I mean, I'm a big fan of our product. I eat it all the time, but it's better for you snacking, clean ingredients, super healthy, and just really fun.
I love that. Yes, I am always grabbing different lesser evil snacks at the grocery store. I love the power puffs of like I think they're called the power puffs, power
Uh,
curls, power
yeah,
curls.
yeah.
Those have recently snuck up on me, and the popcorn, of course, Homer's Blend is like my OG favorite. Um, but yes, definitely like a very. It's been really fun, I think, too, to see like the different like products and how the brand has evolved over the past couple of years and expanded in to different categories. But what I'm super interested in is your specific career path being an art director. So before we kind of get to where you are now, can you explain a little bit more about what an art director even is?
Yeah, so an art director very much guides the creative vision of a brand. So whether it's a larger campaign or smaller scale projects, it's very much making sure that everything sticks to the branding of a company. And then looking at whatever larger, broader ideas that you might have and where they have legs, how it can stem off, and how to make everything a really cohesive message. It's very much storytelling, and that's probably one of my favorite things about this.
Okay, we're gonna dive deeper into your role as art director at Lesser Evil, but I'm curious. So you went to FIT and you studied, I think you started out in menswear design, did international trade and marketing. So did you know that you wanted to be an art director? Did you know that was the career path for you, or kind of what was your mindset when you were in college?
So I'm very fortunately the product of two creatives. Both my parents have been art directors and creative directors, especially in the catalog industry for some very major brands. My mom was the creative director at Bloomingdale's, and so I very much grew up on a photo set between the two of them. My dad's primarily in graphic design, but it kind of was just always there. My grandmother was a seamstress. I felt that pull very early on in my life that I was good at drawing. I found that sort of knack of it being a really good outlet for me. And I think being just brought up in a household that embraced that creativity was really helpful. So it was kind of a no-brainer when I got to high school and wanted to pursue an art career. And yeah, and then I went to FIT, and at first I didn't want to go to FIT because my mom had actually gone there, and I was like,
Uh,
I want to go somewhere else. I want to see the world. I don't, because I grew up in New York, so I did not want to go there. But I had gone to a national portfolio day where it's all the art schools. You kind of show everyone your portfolio, and you have a lot of advisors give you tips of where they think you might be a good fit. And I remember meeting with one of the advisors from FIT, and they looked through my portfolio. I knew that I loved fashion, and she was like, you know what, I don't know if you should be in fashion design. Like, you should apply for menswear, because I see a lot of really strong menswear pieces in your portfolio. And I didn't even realize that that was its own major entirely. And so it was just, I applied, I went in and met the head of the department and I got in and I was just like, all right, it's go time. And so started in menswear.
Was that person telling you like, "Hey, I think you could actually like we should pivot a little bit." Was that exciting to you? Was that like hard to hear or kind of what was going through your head at that time?
I think I knew that I really loved fashion. I hadn't given menswear a whole lot of thought. I just thought it was something that like, oh, you're a designer and you can make men's clothing. And I just didn't I think it took a lot of like, okay, this is different. This might be exciting. And I learned that it was a much smaller major, a much smaller class where the fashion design department was predominantly larger. Menswear design was like around 40 people. And I ended up, I went for it. I don't think I was discouraged. I think I was just more excited. The beautiful thing about FIT is that it's very much a commuter school. It's a type of school where it's maybe some of the students, it's not their first time in college. It's maybe their second career in life. And it was just really awesome to meet people from all different walks of life. I think I was one of the youngest students in our class, so I felt like such a baby being there. But I I loved menswear. I think it was one of the most brilliant programs. It was run by Mark Evan Blackman, and he saw students that he could mold and had so much potential. And I think you saw that in the room. And I mean, to look at where a lot of these people are today, it's unbelievable. Like they're just so successful in their careers. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful program.
What an incredible experience. I can see with how much energy you're speaking about it, how fun that must have been and how much of an impact maybe it had on you early in your career. So I also noticed that then did you switch into marketing later on or kind of what was that? So you finished this program within menswear and then what?
So menswear had formed into an associate program. And then as soon as we were wrapping up, it um, very much was just going to be an elective of fashion design. And while a lot of the students in my class were going off and, you know, getting design jobs very quickly, I still felt, again, like such a kid and wasn't really ready to leave the nest yet. And so my friend Jess is killing it at Mattel right now. But it, people are at Nike, John Varvatos, like they just ran with it. And I just didn't feel ready. I wasn't ready to leave school and at, 19, 20 years old. I just felt like I still had a lot of learning to do. And so I did know that I wanted to be in fashion, but the best way to do that is to learn the business of fashion. So I had applied to the International Trade and Marketing program, also within FIT. And once I was there, it's like, all right, this is cool. And then, so I got my bachelor's of science in international trade.
Okay. So I think that's a very interesting path. So you did first the like creative, like fashion, I guess, path, and then you also kind of balanced that or rounded out that experience with getting some of the, maybe the more, yeah, the more like business, technical side of potentially fashion or just in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point too, are you also doing like internships or any type of stuff in combination with your education?
Yes, actually. So while I was in menswear design, I had gotten an internship with Michael Kors. And so I was their men's collection runway intern. And it was amazing because I was really nervous being there the whole time. But the two designers, it was Miki Tokashiki and Jessica Lombardo, and I'll never forget them. I don't know if they remember me, but they made such a strong impression on me because for it being my first design internship, I just felt like they genuinely cared about me. And I feel like they were just so nice. And even though I was just probably cutting fabric swatches all the time, they made me feel like I mattered and that my opinion mattered. And I always remember taking that and I was like, you know what? When I get to that point one day and I have an intern, like I'm gonna be like that. I just loved that whole experience. And you would see Michael walking down the halls and it was just pretty awesome. And I know that very much care about their interns and that growth at that company. And one of a woman who she was my roommate and became one of my best friends was an intern at the same time but she was in the fashion design program at FIT. She went on to be the design director at Michael Kors Runway, and it's Maggie McGowan, and she's a mega talent. And so there's just so much room at Michael Kors, and I really appreciated that experience.
That is incredible. And this is kind of, so this is your first kind of experience. I know you said you grew up with your parents, potentially like going to some of their stuff, but this is your first time kind of like being the intern and like getting that experience firsthand.
Yes.
Okay. Oh my gosh, how exciting. So during this time, so you are getting your education and you are also at the same time doing some internships. Do you feel like those earlier internships helped you kind of start building the foundation for some of your network within the industry?
Absolutely. I felt like it was so important to kind of build those connections and talk to people. And I mean, the biggest thing I learned is like just be nice to people and show up every single day like it's your first day, or like you just have to always be on it. And I think that it's very easy to get jaded or burnt out. And I think if you just keep showing up and being happy, like that very much resonates into people being like, oh, you know what? We have this intern, like, I think she'd be a great fit at your company, or if you're looking for someone, she's like super perky and upbeat. And, it was a very, it was a good experience for me to learn from.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
so you eventually wrap up your education at FIT. What was kind of your next step entering the industry? Did you choose to go fashion route, the marketing route? Like kind of where did you decide to like fully enter as a graduate?
So I was entering the workforce. It was just like we had just gone through a recession. It was very, very stressful. And I think I kind of had that mentality of maybe just being naive, but I was like, I'll get a job. It's not going to be a problem. And I was applying everywhere and not getting any bites. And I couldn't understand, because I was like, I have a solid portfolio and I've made all these contacts, but there's just no jobs. And I made the kind of commitment to myself where I was like, I want to live in the city. I want to be in New York. I want to live with my friends. I want to have that New York City experience. I got it. I have to work. And so I just like scoured job sites, went to the jobs department, the careers department at FIT. I was literally looking through everything. And then I found an opportunity in product development on LinkedIn, and it was for a small company, but they did product development for mass market brands like J.C. Penney, a brand called Metro Style, and it was taking luxury items that are on the market and figuring out how to make them retail, or making a version of it to retail for a much more cost-effective, affordable price. I kind of looked at it as like, I have tailoring, I have sewing experience, I have business experience. I like fashion. This kind of feels like a puzzle to me to figure out how to make things more affordable. So like, why not take this opportunity? And so I very much went in a more technical fashion route, if that
Okay.
makes, yeah.
So what does your role look like? What does that type of role even look like?
So I'll never speak badly about a position. I will say it was very interesting because the position that I applied for, that they had described to me, definitely wasn't the position that I went into.
Oh, I've
And
heard of this happening before. Yes, yes. Okay.
and I think where they mostly wanted, I think they realized they needed more of an office manager, personal assistant. And at the time, I was young and just looked at it as like, you know what, this is experience. I'm learning, I'm growing. But I think when I look back at it now, I wish I had set boundaries for myself and said, like, you know what, this is unacceptable. I'm not going to pick up your dry cleaning. I'm not going to get you lunch every day. But I didn't know. And I just thought that I was paying my dues and working my way forward. And it was hard because it was such a small company. It was a bunch of older men. There wasn't any sort of friendships there. I felt very isolated, and especially from having gone from this menswear program and international trade where I was surrounded by my peers, and having these wonderful, beautiful friendships to then working in an office and having to wear a suit and just feeling sad all the time. I was like, this is definitely not what I thought it was going to be.
I want to dive in here just a little bit because I do
Yeah.
think that it's a hard balance when you're starting your career because we hear this term pay your dues, right? And so you know, like you said, you're like, okay, well, I thought this is like I'm supposed to do. You think like Devil Wears Prada, like you have to kind of do the grunt work, right? To like get there. So I know you said looking back, it was clearer to you that you should have set boundaries. So for someone who's maybe starting their career, maybe they have an assistant type role where some of their responsibilities are doing the coffee or like picking up some stuff, how would you advise them to set some better boundaries?
I think going in ahead of time, if you apply for a job and I always see that like a red flag is things just like, oh, you'll wear a lot of hats. And like, I
Mm.
think you can be very specific going into it of like, okay, well, what are those hats? And like, yes, we want to be able to pivot and switch gears, but having a very clear and firm understanding of your workload and not being afraid to say like, that's not, I don't have the bandwidth to do that, or like that's not what I signed up for, and being able to call those shots. And like, you're not going to be seen as difficult, you're going to be seen as being very direct. And I think that there's a big difference of always worrying about like, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, I don't, but like, you also need to make sure that you're looking out for yourself and your best interests. And if you're having to get coffee every day and that's not what you signed up to do, like you can make that abundantly clear that that's not part of your job description.
Yeah, I can imagine that being also very scary, you know,
Mhm.
especially when you're young and you it's like this balance, right? Because you want to like prove yourself and you do want to do it, but at the same time, I think we're like way past the years of like
Oh,
the Devil Wears Prada Prada type internships. So yes, I think you're right. It's definitely important to say no. And also like if they're like, "Oh, you don't want to get my laundry, then you're fired," then maybe that's for the best.
exactly. It's don't stress about it because it probably wasn't worth it then.
Yes, yes. And I also, what you mentioned about how a company not being clear about the role requirements, it is a huge red flag. I mentioned that you were obviously a unique situation, but I have so many women who tell me that they were kind of like catfished into a job where the description said that it's the most common one I see is a description said it's a marketing job and then they get it and they're like selling knives at Costco or like it's like completely different. And typically when I'll ask them about it, it's because when they were interviewing, they kind of vaguely talked about, oh, you'll be doing events, but they didn't really say what it was, or they kind of kept saying, oh, you'll learn more about the role later. Be very specific, ask like what will like an average day in this job look like? What will be my main responsibilities? What will like my KPIs be? Like, what are those things? And super important to understand because you're absolutely right. That is a huge red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you nailed it. I love the term as feeling catfished into a job because I feel like that happens so often. And, job descriptions go out and they want you to be interested. They want a lot of people
Yeah.
to apply. So it's like just making sure that you are very much covering yourself. So
Yes. You have
definitely.
to, yeah, interview them just as much as they're interviewing you. And yeah, I always say if the job description's short, be wary. If they aren't being super direct about exactly what your responsibilities are and you are asking and they're avoiding the question, huge red flag. Um, but yeah, unfortunately it's become like a lot more common now. And I unfortunately see a lot of girls kind of get tricked into jobs that promise one thing, but then actually look a lot different when you actually start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so after this role, you ended up going into freelance, is that correct?
Yeah. So I put in some time at this company. I felt very burnt out and I kind of hit this point where I remember talking to my mom and I was just like, I need to take a break. Like this has just been, it was a job that took over my weekends and I just felt really burnt out. And when I had resigned and gave my 2 weeks, I remember it was my last day at that job and my mom calls me up and she was like, hey, I have this stylist. His name is Keith Pollock. He has a major shoot coming up for it's like a 2 week span and needs a second assistant. And I was like, okay. She was like, I know that you don't have anything lined up, which also would never recommend that. Always have something lined up. but I had hit that breaking point. But she was like, you know, he said he needs a second assistant. I don't know what the job is, but I think you should reach out. And I was like, I just wanted a day. Like, when does he need me? She was like, tomorrow. So I give Keith a call and he's like, you know, it's for a really cool company, Andrew Mark. They do coats. It's really cool leather fashion. I think you'd be interested. And it's like, all right, well, sure. And I said yes to this opportunity. And so next day, I'm shopping the streets of New York City with Keith and his assistant Brandon, and we're walking around and I'm like, this is fun, and it's getting to interact with people, and they're silly and they're sassy, and I loved it instantly. And then sure enough, we're on location on these shoots and there's models and I'm helping everyone get ready, and I'm allowed to, I wasn't pinning anything yet, but I was just experiencing this, going from an environment where I was very isolated in an office by myself to all of a sudden being on a photo set with 20, 30 people and all of these moving parts. And I was just like, this is fun. Like, this is coming to work and feeling excited. And I mean, I was making pennies on this job, but it was still just such a cool experience. And getting to work with Keith and Brandon and going throughout that whole process of just growing and learning and being on shoots with them. And that one job turned into a few other jobs with them. And on that job, I remember I met the producer, and he was very, very kind and asked me about where I had grown up. And turns out we had both lived on streets next to each other in Brooklyn Heights. And it was just small talk. I really didn't see it as anything very pivotal, but you know, it just started my life as working alongside Keith and kind of shooting with him and going to different working with different clients. And so then one day I get a call from that producer from that first initial shoot, and he was like, hey, I have an e-commerce shoot coming up and I think you'd be a great fit, and I want you to style that shoot. And I just totally freaked out because I'd always been assisting. I had never done a whole shoot for myself. So I felt very much that I had like imposter syndrome, that this is not, I'm not cut out for this. I'm not ready. But he felt very confident. And so that started kind of my solo styling career, because I showed up to this set ready to go. And the photographer slash art director on that set, his name is Chris Gabur. He is so tall and a very stoic and hard to read individual. And I was terrified of him. It, it was his crew. And I remember doing this shoot and just kind of going through the motions of everything that I had done with Keith and feeling really set. And I remember leaving that shoot and I went home and I just cried because I felt so nervous, because it was just this whole day of being like, I can't mess up. I got to be great. I got to do everything. And I remember talking to my parents, and my mom was like, you know what? You did it. You finished. Go in tomorrow morning and ask Chris how you can make his job easier. What can you do to make everything flow? And just see what any changes you can make to kind of your workflow, your structure, anything. And I was so intimidated by this man, but I went in and I asked him the next morning, like, is there anything I can do differently? And he was just like, you got here on time. The clothes look nice. And we left before 5:30. Okay. And he was just like, do that again. And he walked away. And I know it went well because that was very much the start of me working with Chris, and he has become a huge mentor. And now I know he's a big softie. And so he's intimidating if you don't know him that well. But Chris's team is wonderful. And he has his right hand, Dom Russo Jr., the hair and makeup artist, Bobby Bujicic, has also become one of my best friend's big brother, their studio manager, Tori Brown. They're just a wonderful crew of people. And I felt so lucky to get welcomed into that group and just learning and growing as a stylist and working under Chris. And it was a really special experience and kind of very sorry for that long-winded version of it, but yeah, it was just really awesome because it was such a career shift from where I was, just the year before.
That is a beautiful story told beautifully. So I can like I got goosebumps when you were kind of like telling me that and just imagining what that process must have felt like for you, especially just that stark difference from getting this job out of college. I feel like a lot of people can maybe relate to that too, like not really loving that very first job that you get to like finally finding your footing and that feeling of like when you know you're in the right place of like this is what I meant to do, like this finally feels right. That's like I'm like, "Oh, I can like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps just hearing that." I'm also I love your parents' advice of like you should go in and ask him like, "How can I make your job easier?" I think that is an incredible advice. I know he didn't really say much, but I think that's like a great piece you could probably go in and ask your boss on a new job that everybody loves to hear.
Oh yeah.
I also wanted to ask you, so you started this kind of like freelance journey. You start on some fashion shoots and sets, which sounds super, super, super fun. But then you kind of switched over to e-commerce. That is like a new place. So what is it like showing up to an e-commerce shoot? Because I imagine I mean, is it very different from like doing something more in fashion, or what does it look like?
So fashion editorial, it's kind of, you have set uh pieces of clothing that you'll definitely have to shoot, and it's whatever the client kind of wants, whether you're shooting leather jackets or shoes. And you very much get the stylist gets to kind of dress around whatever that key garment is. Sometimes you'll have like full outfits that you need to showcase, but it's just making everything look beautiful, making it look sexy, making it look sellable, but also having fun with the dimensions and the measurements, the cut of things. So you get a lot of play and a lot of freedom there. And whereas the e-com world is when you go on bloomingdales.com, Macy's.com, any sort of e-com website, it's very much you have the model standing there and then the clothes are pinned to the most accurate form of what they'll look like. I felt like this was really great because I had tailoring experience. So I was very much, my skills were very transferable there because I knew how things were supposed to fit, how to pin them properly. And so you'll go in and you'll have all of the garments, and the merchants will usually say like, this top needs to be paired with this bottom, and you need to show a full 360 view of the entire outfit. And on top of that, this is the criteria for this outfit. We want to showcase this like very cool pocket, or this jacket has this reflective tape and this really nice inside pocket that your headphones can, tuck into. And so it's just making sure to show all of these elements of this garment in the most beautiful light. Generally on major e-com shoots, your shot count, which is the number of garments you have to shoot, is extremely high. So you need to be able to work very quickly and to be able to pin and make everything look nice and steamed so there's no wrinkles. And I think having a crew that you're very comfortable with, whether it's the hair and makeup artist, the digital tech, the photographer, art director, the merchants, having that flow and understanding how to kind of build out this very seamless system with people makes the days so much easier so that you can get through your shot count. So it's exciting. It keeps you on your toes. It's kind of, it's making donuts. It's showing up and doing what you got to do. And it's really fulfilling to then see it on a website and you're like,
Yeah.
did that. So mhm.
I always love hearing about pieces of a role like this because I look on online shop all day every day, but I don't often think about okay, what went behind like this model that's wearing this outfit. Like there's actually a whole team that was like being like, okay, like you're gonna wear it like this, and I want you to pose like this, and the lighting's gonna be like this, and the shot, and like so much likely goes into that us as the consumers like maybe don't really think through.
Oh, it's 100%. And we would all look at each other on set and just be like, you would see a garment pinned all the way down this woman's back, and you just be like, they'll never know. You'll never know. But again, like it's just such a great experience because now I feel like I do look at clothing online, and I feel like I have a very different perspective of it, of like, I know what
Mhm.
went into this type of stuff. Yeah, it's definitely, it's different. It takes online shopping to a whole new element for me.
Yes.
Mhm.
It sounds fun. That's like I can imagine being in an environment like that. Like, and again, I keep comparing it to that first role of like being isolated in an office versus like working as a team and like having a lot of people that you are like getting to collaborate with. I feel like for people who are creative, you get a lot of energy from that, from like sharing ideas and like bouncing off of each other.
100%. I'm really sorry about the banging in there. If it's affecting, I can go ask them.
I can't, I heard it at the beginning, but I honestly can't hear it anymore.
Okay.
So yeah, you're totally fine.
It's where they make some stuff. So it's
You're all good.
um
My some neighbor around me, like every day for 30 minutes, blasts music with loud bass, and I can never predict it. He started a little bit, but he stopped. So like hopefully we're good for the rest of the episode.
okay. But yeah, it's a very different experience being on a set, and you're playing music and you're able to talk. Everybody's working, but you're able to talk about your life and your past experiences. And I I learned so much from all of these people, and different tips and tricks and ways to do things differently. And I mean, they saw me through so many facets of life, of moving into a new apartment and the stresses that go into that, and boyfriends and then ex-boyfriends, and then at that time I met the man who is now my husband. And so they saw me through all of those phases of life, and I very much felt like I grew up with these people. And
Oh,
Chris very much kind of molded us into the team that he needed. And so I felt incredibly grateful for my experience with them.
oh, that sounds incredible. And obviously now to getting where you are now at Lesser Evil. So you have this huge stint of your life where you are doing this, type of freelance or contract roles. So what kind of made you decide to take the shift into now being the art director and then also specifically kind of going in-house and working for one brand?
Well, a little thing called the pandemic happened.
Oof.
I feel like this is very much a common thread amongst a lot of the ladies you interview. Yes, it definitely threw a wrench in the good thing that we had going, because obviously the city shut down and you couldn't congregate in a group. And so we're very much in models' faces and in everybody's business. And so I, during this whole time of styling, I had met my then boyfriend. He was in the Navy and was stationed in Virginia Beach. And I very much in that kind of like, how hard could it be? We eventually moved in together. I left New York City, moved to Virginia Beach. And so I was commuting every other week from Virginia Beach to New York City to,
How far is that?
honestly, if you take I mean, I always fly Delta, so Delta forever. But it was from JFK to Norfolk Airport was a 45-minute flight. And so
Every
I would,
every day you were taking this flight?
no, not every day.
Oh.
No, no, it was because my parents still lived in New York. I would stay with them when I was up. So I would fly up on a Saturday or a Sunday. I would shoot the whole week and then shoot the week after. And then I would fly back to Virginia Beach, be home there for a week or two, and then do it again. So it was just,
That's a lot.
oh yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about how to like pack efficiently and how to, I became a road warrior, and it was definitely a different experience. I can't say that I would recommend it, but I definitely think it humbles you for sure when you're at the mercy of the airlines, and a lot of traveling is out of your control. But so yeah, we had been shooting, and I remember that producer that I had initially met that got me on there. He called me and was like, you know what? The studio's going to shut down. We all thought it was going to be for 2 weeks. And then he was like, and we'll see you back there soon enough. Um, wasn't 2 weeks, so much longer, but I'm not good at sitting still. And I mean, we learned that from jumping from one job straight into the next. I think that I had always been on the go, that I never really had that time to just kind of sit and figure out what I wanted to do. But because I had, graphic design experience from school and knew how to draw, and I felt that creative pull of like, okay, well, I'm not on set, I'm not around people, like how do I keep myself going? And so I just was applying for remote freelance jobs. So I had already had my LLC set up, so I felt like kind of it felt pretty seamless. And so I was saying yes to any and every design opportunity that came my way, whether it was doing graphics for Dollar Tree slash Dollar General. Like I was just, I wanted to be in it. I wanted to have design experience and to just work, even if it was via Zoom or Skype with teams. Like I was doing anything and everything to build out my portfolio. So it wasn't just fashion, it wasn't just styling, it wasn't just, and my portfolio from school. There were more real world elements in there. And so I just got busy with it, and I picked up a wine and spirits client. And so like that was really cool. And I just kept going with it. And then sure enough, the pandemic was very much still happening. My husband, my husband was um, out of the Navy at this point. And so we felt like there was nothing keeping us in Virginia Beach. So we moved back up north. And at that point, I was able to be back on set and styling. And so I had kind of had this weird shift of being in the design element and then now back to styling. And it felt really great. But we had moved to Connecticut, and that commute from where we live in Connecticut into Manhattan, I was spending 4 hours on a train every.
No. Oh.
And so whereas I was like, okay, this commute is longer than my flight from New York to Virginia Beach. So it got difficult because this was something that I loved so much and was so passionate about. But at the same time, I was leaving the house when it was still dark out in the morning, and then coming home, being in a photo studio that we had to close the windows, and then coming home in the dark. And I felt, I just felt sad because I was there and enjoying my friends and being there, but I also just like didn't get to be outside sometimes. And I think that was also really tough for me because I very quickly learned like we need more than just our jobs to feel fulfilled. We need more than, you know, the everyday career highlights. Like we need get outside, get fresh air, like go spend time with your loved ones. And I think that I started feeling like I was have in my career that I love so much, but I was not feeling fulfilled outside of it. And so I think that that became very difficult for me. So I had driven by this very brightly colored building that had this bald man on it. And I was like, that's a weird building. And I went shopping at the supermarket, and I had bought a bag of LesserEvil popcorn because it was the same bald man on the bag that was on the side of this building. And one of the women at the supermarket, it was a local supermarket called Caroluzzi's, was like, oh, this is a local brand, right? And I was like, I did not know that. She's like, well, they're here out of Connecticut. It's healthy snacks. I think you'll like it. And I was just like, all right, whatever. That night, I get a LinkedIn notification that LesserEvil is looking for an art director. And I was like, how
What? I'm like,
like,
I got covered in chills again. What?
yeah. And so I was just like, this is a sign if I've ever seen one. But I felt really apprehensive because I still loved being with my crew. I still loved styling. I met so many people there, and I wasn't sure I was ready to give that up to pursue this. But again, like the very great advice of my family and my husband was like, apply. What's the worst that's happens? Like, okay, they want to interview you. Great. You don't get the job. You're still doing what you're doing. Great. They interview you, and then like maybe this is a new opportunity. And so I applied, and literally, I want to say like a few hours later, I got an email response from our HR manager, Jess, asking me to come in. So yeah, it was definitely a cool experience getting that call. for sure.
What an incredible series of events that happened, and like hearing might be one of the like most serendipitous stories of how I've had a guest end up at a new company. And I've heard a lot of different ones, but that is so crazy of just like seeing the building. I do love the little bald. Is it a Buddha? I always think of he's like a Buddha man. Is that like totally not it?
He's considered a guru. So
A
it's
guru.
a
Okay.
a
Okay.
guru. So yes, his name is Homer. I learned that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so Homer's blends. That's
Mhm. Yeah.
okay, okay. Did not
Very
know that.
clever.
So yeah, you see the building, you buy the snack. Like most of the time, the cashier is like not really talking that much. So it's also like coincidentally, like she actually brought it up and was like, "Oh, this is a local brand." To then the like LinkedIn, that's a lot of signs.
Oh, I know. So I was just like, I recently to not hop on this. And so I get the call to come in and I interview with the marketing team and it's I always felt like every job I've ever applied to, every job I've ever interviewed for, and I'm sure that a lot of people feel this, I would be so nervous going into interviews. And even though I was like, I know my stuff, I'm going to be fine. I feel like I'd get to the interview and I'd almost black out because I was so scared of, I don't know. And I'm sure that I didn't just sit there with a blank look on my face the whole time. I know that I had the interview and the conversation, but if you asked me as soon as I got out of the interview, like, how did that go? What did you talk about? I literally couldn't tell you because I was just so looking forward to getting through the interview. And so then this was the first job that I ever interviewed for that I felt very present for the whole time. And just like it was a small company, but to see everybody spoke so highly of the team here and everything is pink as you can see and everyone was just really connected and I interviewed with our CEO Charles and he was just so happy and loved this company so much. He loves this company and it felt very humanizing. And I remember he asked me about my morning routine and if I have positive self-talk and it just felt like such a different interview experience than I've ever had. And I was just like, I think this is it. Even if they don't want me, like I'm going to do everything I can to at least get my foot in the door somehow. And so I think it was definitely a different experience. So I'm very happy that it ended up going well.
I think that's probably also like a really good sign of knowing that you're in the right place, as kind of
Yeah.
feeling more comfortable in the interview process and more so at feeling, yeah, less of like the intimidation. Like, yes, you're like really excited and you want the opportunity, but you still feel comfortable, with the team.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah.
What an incredible story to like hearing every little piece. You did also such an incredible job sharing that of how kind of all the different pieces of your life and like a lot of the like serendipitous moves and like things that happen like all led to one place, which or I know there's still much ahead in your career, but at least for right now, like all led to a place kind of where you feel really fulfilled and really happy where you are, even though you didn't necessarily start that way at the beginning of your career.
Oh no. And I mean, I'm here now. I in November it'll be 3 years.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I I just look at where the company was and where it has gone. And I oversee the most wonderful design team. I have my designers, Tom Scallion and Nick Gorell, and I could not imagine this job without them. I'm nothing without them as an art director, and they are so talented. And I just feel really grateful because I come in with really big asks and really big creative ideas, and they very much get to execute them. And so I just feel like it's pushed our branding so much because they very much, I think they used to get very nervous about my big asks and ideas, and now they kind of just with it. And it's been amazing because I've built out this team that we all know each other's strengths and where somebody might be, the stronger component for a certain spot or idea. And they're just really brilliant designers. And our marketing team, we're overseen by Kate Mack, and she's kind of the liaison. She's now the VP of marketing, and she is very much the liaison between the sales team and our marketing team. And it's really great because our team is small but mighty. We do a lot, but I feel like you make these friendships, and it's just been a wonderful experience because I now have one of my best friends, Meg Reed, and she's our senior partnerships influencers manager. She's very talented, and I don't know, it's just such a fun experience and environment. And we just hired a VP of strategy a couple months ago, and he's now become like Jeff Stokel. He's an incredible mentor for me. And so it's so nice to come into a company where people genuinely care about each other, and they care about that work-life balance that I feel like a lot of companies lose sight of. And now I'm a mom to the most wonderful little boy, and I feel like I get to come here and have this very fulfilling and robust career, but I also get to go home at a very nice hour and spend time with him and my absolute babe of a husband. So I feel really grateful for this company because we not only make delicious, amazing snacks that are very clean and minimal ingredients, but also like it's just a bomb ass company and I love it. I'm so grateful for it.
It's very inspiring hearing your story and hearing everything kind of come full circle. I think a lot of people strive to be in a place where you are now, where kind of all the pieces feel like they finally make sense and everything kind of fits. And yes, there's room for growth. And I'm sure there's other things you'd love to achieve, but feeling really content and happy. And I can definitely see like how much you kind of really love where you are now, which again is super, super inspiring to hear. The last thing I do want to through your whole 1 second. Sorry, my microphone switched. Okay. One thing I do want to touch on with your role at LesserEvil is if you could let us know. So before at this other freelance role, you weren't the art director, correct? Or were
No,
you the
there were certain projects that I would be an art director on, but it was whether it was like a more of a marketing focused role or more of a design lead role or styling or just like a creative consultant. So my title kind of shifted for whatever the brand's need was.
Okay, so here moving into LesserEvil, you are the art director. So if you can walk, I would love to just hear what, again, that process looks like, because I do feel like I always love having interesting titles on the podcast because I think it kind of opens people's mind to like where your career could possibly take you versus like the very maybe simplified view a lot of us have when we come out of college or when we're in college of like what we could possibly do with our lives. I feel like there's so many more options. So I know you guys just did like a mobile truck with Olipop. If you guys can, or if you can just kind of like walk me through what your process is when you guys are working on a new campaign.
Absolutely. So we did this co-branded mobile tour, and this very much stemmed from an idea. Meg had been working with them on kind of something that can go cross country and showcasing both of our products. And what was really cool is we met with their design team and kind of started spitballing a couple of ideas back and forth. And my team had built out a deck of ideas that we really loved, and their team absolutely fell in love with it. And so we were able to kind of keep the ball rolling of, okay, like how do we branch off of this? How do we keep going? Where does this have legs? And so my team built out all of the creative for this beautiful truck, and it's bright and purple. You can see it on our Instagram, LesserEvil Snacks. And it was just a really awesome process, especially getting to collaborate with another design team and kind of, hear what they like, what they don't like, and just to see how impressed they were with our workload. And I think one of the biggest compliments from them was they're like, "Oh, you guys are such a big team and you're so quick." And we're like, "Oh, we're a small group. Like our design team is 3 people. We have a packaging art director, and it's just us." So the fact is that like we got that sort of praise from them was just really cool. But yeah, it was a lot of hours of design work and trying to make sure everything was flawless. And once we saw the truck out in the wild, it was all of our first mobile tour. So it was definitely cool to
Oh.
see. It very much aligned with, um, conveniently, I had done a photo shoot earlier this year, and I was able to tap my crew from my previous career. And I had the Digitech who would be on set with me, Dom Russo Jr. He was our photographer. Bobby Bujizic got to be our hair and makeup artist. And we had one of our beautiful models, Deirdre Martin. She was there. And I had this photo shoot happen, and that photo shoot turned into a major out of home campaign, that's billboards and posters and everything all over these key cities, which then this co-branded mobile tour was in each of those cities. So it was a lot of moving parts all happening at the same time, but I was just so grateful that I had my old team able to come in, help me with this shoot, produce something beautiful, and then, to see all of this happening cohesively. It just felt very full circle, and just the importance of having those connections and maintaining those very wonderful and healthy relationships in your past. I think it always comes back around. So yeah, it was just a very cool experience to have. It was a big year for us at LesserEvil.
Yeah. And I'm sure for you as the art director getting to see, so I feel like this with Sky Society, it's like one thing it's one thing to do stuff digitally, but it's a completely different thing when you get to see that like in a real life setting, right? If you get to see the truck or the truck next to the billboards, like that is a totally different type of feeling and excitement of like actually getting to see it physically. And so, and then also now that you got to work like back with that team, like you said, bringing everything full circle.
It was amazing. And I mean, we put out TV commercials this year. Like there was just so much creative happening. And yeah, you said it. It's so wonderful to see it out in the wild. And it's, I think, especially weird when people take photos and then post them on their Instagram that they're like, oh, my favorite brand. And I'm just like, my team did that. Like we did that. And I to see how excited Dom is that his, first major campaign that he photographed is on billboards, and that this is Deirdre's first her face is on a billboard. Like to be able to give that for people because they've been there for me, it just feels, it's really a wonderful feeling. And I'm just so grateful that I have this opportunity and that I work for a company that trusts me enough to execute this and to kind of bring it to life, and that they trust me with it. It's a very, I feel really good about that. So it's really nice.
Well, Amanda, your story has been just wildly inspiring. I've been so engaged hearing like every little piece about everything has come together. Do you have any last piece of advice you would like to share for women in marketing?
Be kind to people. Like everywhere you go, remember people's names. Just a lot of it is be kind, because as big and vast as this whole marketing as a whole might feel, it is incredibly small. And people will remember you. They remember what you did for them, what you didn't do for them. And so you want people to be able to walk away from any sort of experience working with you of like, wow, that was really awesome. And that's just be kind. Like it's yeah, be kind.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on the podcast. This has just been such a fun conversation. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate you.